Okay, colleagues, those people who haven't muted themselves, could they do so, just to be on the safe side? Good evening, Morden. Lovely to see you guys, even though we are doing it like this. Right, we've got a fairly packed thing for you today. We're going to start off with Matthew Hopkins and the 2021 census, who's agreed because our first speaker was actually a tiny bit late. Before we start, who's had the jab then? Stick your hands up if you have, and if you're on camera. Well done, those who have. Well done. Congratulations. And of you, who had the Pfizer? Oh, and the rest of us had the Oxford one, the AstraZeneca. I'm told we've got a second class thing there, but I'm just very, very glad it's inside my. Oh, hang on, what's happening here?
It's Matthew's presentation.
That's all right. So, Matthew, do you want to get started? Seeing as what it's all here.
Certainly will. Oh,
there you go.
Before Matthew starts, if you've got any questions, use the chat box, okay? To say that you've got a question you want to place, and at the end of each presentation, there will be a time for a small Q&A session. So, okay. Matthew, down to you, mate.
Brilliant. All right, thanks very much for having me, first of all. So just going to give a quick overview of the census. I'm sure some of it will be stuff you're familiar with, but just as a recap, then just going to cover some timelines, what's happening when, what we've been doing so far. Then we'll just cover off what people will actually receive in the post, as well as the online. I'm going to cover off accessibility and support as well. So next slide, please. Perfect. So yeah, census is a once in a decade snapshot of society. This year it's happening in England and Wales, 2021, not in Scotland. They're actually going to be delaying it. But it gives us the most detailed, accurate information we have about society as a whole. Next slide, please. Brilliant. And yeah, the reason the census is so important is because it ultimately it's important in terms of allocating billions of pounds of funding to local services. And it's a case of the more accurate the data is, the more effectively funds can actually be allocated. So yeah, we want as many people as possible, preferably everyone, to fill it in to make sure that the data is as on point as it should be. And yeah, also the census data can later be used for funding applications for organisations too, and also to ensure that support is available for the areas that need them. Next slide, please. Perfect. And then, yeah, so my role is around community engagement. So as I say, in order for that data to be as accurate as possible and for the funding to go to the right places, we need people to take part. So basically, to cut a long story short, we just want everyone to take part. You're all obviously invested in the local area, so I encourage all of you to help raise awareness of the census, in particular, sort of allaying people's fears if people have heard sort of some kind of misinformation about the census as well, just to make sure that everyone's aware and can take part. Next slide, please. So just some headline facts here. So Census Day is Sunday, 21st of March. So the census data is all about where people are on that day. However, people are going to have a lot more time than just the day to fill it in. They're going to be able to fill it in from when they receive their access code, which is going to be sent to them in the post, and they're going to have a good few weeks to do so. So it's going to be a digital first census, which means it's not online only, but it's online first. So we're going to be sending out access codes in the post. People can then use them to go online. However, if people would rather do it by paper and post, that's perfectly acceptable too. They just need to call up and then they can get a paper form sent to them. And in terms of engagement, we're focusing on what we're kind of considering to be harder to reach groups, whether it's internet access or language, whatever kind of barriers there are, just to make sure that everyone's available. And as I say, there's going to be plenty of support online and over the phone available too. Next slide, please. Gremlins.
Bear with me a sec, we're having some technical issues.
No worries.
I'm just going to restart that slideshow.
Sure.
So,
No worries. Yeah, so I guess one of the next kind of few slides are going to focus on data protection and just how the ONS keeps information safe. Just because we're aware that in this sort of age, there's going to be kind of misinformation flying around, and some people might have heard incorrect information about the questions or about what census data is used for. So yeah, just going to give you a bit of information about that sort of stuff. And yeah, following on from that, as I say, I'll just run through the timelines of what you can expect to receive in the post, and I'll give you a few examples as well, just so you're prepped and ready. And then just quickly cover off some ways that you might be able to support your local communities as well.
okay, how's that?
Perfect. There we go. Seamless. So yeah, keeping information safe. So yeah, the key point here is that census data remains anonymized for 100 years. So when you obviously enter your name and everything when you're filling in the form, but that's then kept under lock and key for 100 years until for things like genealogy and people looking up family trees and that sort of thing, it will get released in 100 years time. So the 1921 census is actually going to be released soon if anyone's interested in any family trees or any of that sort of stuff. Next slide, please. And then, yeah, this is, as far as I was saying, sort of tackling disinformation is concerned, this is kind of a key point, particularly the second point here. So personal information isn't used to change any services an individual gets. So it can't be used by government to affect benefit claims, residency, immigration, or by landlords. We've heard of things like people getting some sort of incorrect information about it might affect immigration claims or where they're living, but that's definitely not the case. So that's kind of a key thing there. Next slide, please.
Being very strange.
Have I just forgotten to write anything on this one? This should be the guideline. Oh, there we go. It seems to be loading slowly.
I'll just stop sharing and then try again.
No worries. Is it worth me trying from this end to screen share?
How many more screen? Oh, how many more slides are there to do? Matthew?
It's about 8 or so. I mean, I would just sort of run through them, but they're all sort of kind of visual, which I think might be could be why it's causing problems to load.
I mean, I mean, if you wanted to stay with us, Matthew, and we can get the technical problem sorted out while we listen to Leonie, who has arrived now. Hello, Leonie. Would that be all right? I mean,
Yeah, not a problem at
it'll
all.
give us something to look forward to, apart from anything else, you know.
No worries.
The last 8 slides of the census. Is that all right? Is that all
Yeah,
right,
no worries.
Chris?
Sure, that's no problem.
Okay. Well, sorry about that, colleagues. These things do happen, particularly on Zoom. Matthew, as I say, will be back with us later. And in the meantime, it is my real pleasure to introduce Leonie Cooper, our Assembly member, who's going to tell you about her job. Leonie, pleased to see you.
Hi, I'm sorry I was a bit late. I've just had a phone call from my cousin who lives in Southampton to tell me that one of my other cousins who lives in Bournemouth has just died.
Oh.
So yeah.
Are you all right to go on?
Well, I was just wondering whether, not to come at all, but I thought I ought to sort of drop in. It wasn't COVID, but he has just died in ICU. He had been ill for a long time, and really the whole of his life he had one of those life-limiting conditions. So I must say I am actually slightly distracted because I literally got the news just before I arrived.
Well, okay, Leonie, just give us a very short thing. Our hearts are with you, and we won't ask you any taxing questions. Okay, is that all right?
Thank you. I thought you said taxi questions for a minute.
No.
I don't want any questions about taxis either, if you don't mind. Look, it is actually a very difficult time, I think, for us all. I think I've been into City Hall now maybe 3 times since March of last year, because I chair one of the committees, and then of course we've gone back into lockdown, and we've got the economy committee is actually tomorrow, and it's been meeting very frequently. I'm still the deputy chair of environment, which met today, but I was participating in the environment committee from exactly where I'm sitting now, addressing you in the Morden Community Forum, and obviously I've just suffered a bereavement. There are so many constituents who've suffered bereavement, who've rung me about businesses, who've asked me to do casework about businesses, and I know that it's been a huge strain on councillors across the whole of London. And then difficulties pop up, like suddenly needing to do surge testing in a particular part of Merton, and I think it's been an amazing time for people who are involved in public service. And certainly looking at City Hall, literally we all left, and how everyone has responded over the last 11 months to the pandemic, I think it's been a great tribute to what boroughs like Merton and places like City Hall can do, particularly working together. And I think it's as watching people stepping up from different services and starting to pull together. But we are going to come out of this. I was actually feeling very happy today because they're going ahead of schedule in my part of London with the vaccinations. So both myself and another fellow councillor in my ward were vaccinated. So it suddenly felt like the light at the end of the tunnel was no longer an oncoming train, but I was moving towards a time when I could start to think about going out more often and looking at other people that I know have had vaccinations as well and thinking the same for them, because I know so many people who spent a lot of time shielding, and it's been, and that has been a huge stretch for local authorities. And what City Hall has done in terms of the support that it's given through the Everyone In programme and to people who are homeless, what's happened with setting up the SCG, the Strategic Coordination Group, what's happened in terms of probably slightly more controversially installing street space changes alongside the changes that councils have introduced through the low traffic neighbourhood programme. I have to say, I personally do think that making really big changes like that, the more consultation that you do, the better it's likely to land. And I think there's a number of boroughs who beyond Merton who've had a lot of lot of discussion about the changes that have been implemented, because they were done very, very quickly, and that was what Grant Shapps insisted on. So I think watching people working together, the fire brigade has been working with the ambulance service. They've been driving the ambulances, and obviously I've been in constant contact with them. The police, the first wave were not hit too badly by sickness. The second wave, talking to the borough commander for Merton and the other surrounding 3 boroughs, they had more than 20% of the staff off sick with COVID or self-isolating, that on top of any kind of normal levels of sickness. So it's been a really incredibly difficult period, but I think we are now starting to come out of it, and I hope that with the roadmap announced this week, with the dates when we can start to move forward, that the money that the mayor has had to reduce from his budgets because of the restrictions as a result of some income not coming in, he has still maintained the spend on the Green New Deal. So I think building back better and making sure that we continue to tackle air quality, making sure that the good work that has been done so far continues around those areas. And then through the Economy Committee, we've been looking very hard to make sure that the whole concept of making sure that you've got the 15-minute neighborhoods that people can walk to, and that you've got everything 15 minutes from anybody's house, and that's the principles on which we're operating, and we're trying to implement that as we move out of this. I think I'll leave it there, because I'm sure some people will have questions, hopefully not too many about taxis. Thank you, Chair.
Does anybody have, thank you very much indeed, Leonie. Does anybody have a question for Leonie? Leonie, I think you've been let off the hook.
That's very kind. That's very nice of you all. Thank you. If there is anything, obviously tonight is not the greatest night for me, as you would have just heard. If there is something that you think about afterwards, I can see Elspeth might have put a hand up. She's got a little white hand on. No, it's there all the time. If you do want to, it's first name dot last name leonie.cooper@london.gov.uk. So drop me a line if there is something that's concerning you. And I think I will go, if you don't mind, Chair. Thank you.
I think that's entirely appropriate. And again, very sorry for your loss, Leonie. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to, normally I'd stay on for a bit, but I am going to go. Thank you.
Right. So, Matthew, are you up to speed now?
Yeah, I'm going to try screen sharing from my end to see if that works instead. Just gonna give that a go.
We wish you luck. Do you want to start from the beginning again, or do people prefer you to go from halfway through? I think you did most of the beginning bit very well, so go from halfway through.
Okay. I'm afraid I can't screen share from this end. Sorry.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
I think it's working from my end now, so
oh, perfect.
Should be all right. Fingers crossed.
There we go. Okay. So hopefully you can see this okay on your screens. It's just a quick. Sorry, I'm sort of leaning in here at the writing a bit more. It's just an overview of kind of what's been happening so far, as well as what's yet to come. So we've been doing sort of community engagement work, working closely and local community groups from last year really, and now we're in February. You might have seen some of the stuff around the census in the press. Certainly it was kicked off on the One Show a couple of weeks back, and there's been a lot more about it going on since then. Some of you might have actually received your postcards in the post, just giving you a heads up about the census. Then later on you'll get a letter which has got a unique access code, which I might have mentioned before, which is what you then use to go online and fill in the census. However, as I mentioned, if you'd rather get a paper copy, that's perfectly fine too. And there is, if you just go to census.gov.uk or give the telephone number a call, you can request a paper copy. And then after census day itself, you can fill in your census from as soon as you get your code. and then it's just about where you are on census day. And then after census day, there's also going to be a field operation, so people will be going door to door in a COVID compliant, very distanced manner, just to encourage people to complete the census. It is a legal obligation, but I appreciate there's lots going on at the moment, so just to give people a nudge, really. And yeah, last day is scheduled for 4th of May, so you've got a fair amount of time to do it. And then the next few slides are just going to be a quick sort of snapshot, kind of what these items will look like, just so you know what to look out for. So the postcards, some of you may have already received this. Next slide, please. Then, yeah, this is going to be the unique access code. So you'll receive a letter, obviously, in an envelope, which will have a 16-digit code, which you can then go on census.gov.uk, fill it in, and answer the questions. Next question. Next slide, sorry. I think okay, I mean, to be fair, if we can get this, I think we might have skipped a couple, but this is an important one. So accessibility, you know, people need alternative arrangements to access, in order to read it, in order to listen to the questions. There's a whole host of different options available. Again, the website census.gov.uk has got loads of information on language translations, easy read braille, translation booklets for the questionnaire, all of this stuff, again on the website. And it's also available, some support is on the telephone as well. Next slide, please. Yeah, so there's also the telephone centres. So the original number, the original capacity of telephone operatives has been sort of drastically increased in light of COVID and the fact that you know, some people aren't necessarily going to be able to have the sort of the support that they would have had normally, and some people might be shielding, and all of these kind of circumstances which have come into play. And then yeah, they can call up. They can actually there's a service where people can actually answer the questions over the phone, or they can request a paper version of the questionnaire if they have difficulty doing it online or don't have internet access, for instance. Next slide, please. I think we might have gone back. And then yeah, just a quick snapshot of, there's a whole host of different languages which we've been engaging with different community groups, and also actually the questionnaire itself and the questions are available in different languages also. Next slide, please. And then yeah, when it comes to how you can help support, which obviously be very crucial for obviously in COVID restrictions, supporting people to fill in their questionnaire, but also just letting people know that there is this kind of telephone support, and there is language support available if English isn't someone's first language. And then this is a big one for me, this helping to promote the message that the information is safe. So earlier on I mentioned that census data isn't used to sort of identify an individual and, you know, affect someone's claimants for benefits or immigration status or anything like that. And it's kept under lock and key, and that's a really important message for people, just in order to sort of target sort of misinformation, fake news, all of that sort of stuff. And then if anyone's in particular community groups, Facebook groups, WhatsApp, just if you're able to share any information on the census, that would also be very welcome. And then yeah, I've got a couple of well, next slide, sorry. I've just got my details there, as well as the census website, which I'd encourage everyone to go and have a look at. And I will also get the telephone number, which will be live from the 1st of March. I'll get that sent out as well once that's live. So yeah, does anyone have any questions? Whatever the appropriate sort of question and answer format is, I don't know whether Chris, you want to sort of.
There is definitely one. Dennis, you got a question? Unmute yourself.
Yes, it's sort of part question, part comment. Now,
Okay.
I know when I first became a councillor, St Helier was the ward with the highest amount of elderly people. Now, I know that's probably changed by now, but there are still quite a lot that do not have access to, well, to computers, to mobile phones, and
Okay.
they will need, I would guess, if they're going to put paper, but it's the point about getting in touch with them, because a lot of the elderly people wouldn't open the door 2 years ago when we were going around canvassing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're going to be even less likely to open the door. Maybe, is it possible to push back the end date till after June the 21st? Because I don't think a lot of them will respond if it's a door-to-door call.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point in light of the recent announcements. I just totally see where you're coming from. I mean, as far as current information that I have, the plan isn't to extend it, but I'm one of 30,000 field staff temporary workers, so I'm sure people senior at the ONS are very well aware of the implications of the kind of the roadmap out of here, and the implications for elderly people, and as well as other people who might be shielding, or you know, for whatever other reason. But the only thing I would say is that everyone will be getting the postcard through the door first of all, and then there's going to be the letter information pack explaining that if people don't have you know, giving the access code, but also saying if they don't have internet access, they can call up the number. So if people do have a home telephone, then they will still have a letter telling them the number to call. So I'm hoping that some people, that will kind of help some people. They might not have internet access or a mobile phone, but if they do have a home telephone line, they should still be able to call up the number and either get help on the phone or ask for a paper questionnaire to be sent to them.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions for Matthew? Oh, Leslie, unmute yourself.
Saw something pop up. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, sorry, Matthew. I remember years ago that the government of the day, many years ago, decided not to continue with these censuses because they cost too much money. So I was absolutely amazed when this one reared its ugly head. But secondly, well, that's just a comment. I don't know how.
No. Comments are valid.
But also, this is compulsory. I can see where Dennis is coming from. If people don't fill it out for whatever reason, what's the retribution? And also the government hardly knows how many people are in this country to start with.
Yeah, I mean, to sort of come to your latest point first, I mean, agreed, but this is, you know, if everyone fills it in, then they certainly will. But yeah, I take your point. It's I heard in the past, long before I was doing this role, that there were rumours around there wouldn't be another one, and I've heard rumours that this will be the last one. But the official line is that it's going to be reviewed after this one. So so yeah, that's take from that what you will. But yeah, I mean, it is still the best sort of overall picture of society and of the numbers. And you
I
know,
don't
where
have a problem.
services are
I don't have a
needed.
problem with it, Matthew. I don't have a problem with it. I'm just curious about how they're going to find these people who don't actually fill them in, and what are they going to do with them? Send them to jail?
Given given the circumstances and what we've already mentioned, COVID and people shielding and elderly, what have you, I certainly wouldn't think that would be something they'd be pursuing.
I fear that's an impossible question to answer.
All right, I'll let you off there, Matthew.
Anyone else?
Thanks for
Anyone
that.
else? Anyone else with a question for Matthew?
There's a question in the chat room for Matthew about filling the form in online, whether you'll be able to go back and review your answers before you submit them.
Yes, you can. And one other thing, sorry, just on the online form to mention is that some of the questions, for example, national identity, there is an option to write your own answer in a text box, so you can answer the question exactly as you see fit, rather than selecting from a set number of options. And that kind of text box format is used in quite a few of the questions. Just while I remember that.
And on the long-term future of the census, there was a lot of discussions after the last census about whether it could be replaced with administrative data. Some of that work is taking place, so they're getting some data from us and other local authorities that will supplement this census, so they can ask less questions this time around. And then we'll see if in 10 years' time there's a much reduced version again, because the administrative data is better. One of the main issues has been, as they sort of compared different local authorities gathering different data in different formats, it's quite hard to build up a national picture from that information. There's a lot of inconsistencies. It takes a lot of data cleansing. So I think the feeling was this time around, statistically as a country, we weren't ready to abandon it in its current format, but next time round, who knows?
Okay. Matthew, I got a very brief. Oh, sorry, Gillian first. Unmute yourself. Unmute first.
Yes, it's
Thank you.
basically to ask if the letters, say in Merton, will all go out at the same time. The reason I ask is that our next door neighbour is clueless. I mean, she has dementia, so it's not totally her fault. But if I know that she will have received the letter, I can check on her and then make the necessary, or take the necessary steps to help her fill in a paper census.
Yeah, I mean that's a really sort of kind thought. Yeah, they will all be going nationally within 2 or 3 days of each other from 3rd of March. I don't know if they're going to be the same day specifically. I'd imagine that on the same street they will all go out at the same time, but yeah, they'll all be broadly within the same time period. So I'd say if you've got yours, it's very likely she'll have got hers as well.
Oh, great, thank you.
No problem.
Very much, Gillian. I've got a very short question, actually.
Sure.
Empty properties. If a property is empty, how does the census find out?
So no one fills it in.
Asked.
Is the sorry, the lazy answer to that. But it's kind of actually sort of raises a couple of other things, because, for example, students might be at an address which is not necessarily their term time address because of the sort of COVID situation. So there is some guidance in the form on how you should consider yourself if, for example, you're at an address which is not your normal address because of your circumstances changing due to COVID. So thanks for the reminder on that. But as far as if the property is empty, then no response would indicate that, and the analysis is based on if obviously people will go around to the property, but if there's no one living there, then yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much indeed, Matthew. We've learned a lot about the census.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
the next person is Barry. Have we got Barry here?
No, Barry's going to join us after 8 o'clock. He's in the COVID champions meeting at the minute. So we're going to skip to.
Okay, so we're going to go straight on then to Tara and Mark, who are going to tell us about small sites, among other things. Are you there?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Hello. I'm fine. I'm great.
Good.
You're quite absent actually. We can only see
the video is still not up actually.
Oh, the video. No, that's fine.
Yeah, better. Thank you very much for inviting us here this evening. I'm actually going to duck out and pass the entire presentation over to my colleague Mark, who is more than capable of leading on this. And we're here to talk to you tonight about the two consultations that are out at the moment, one on the borough character study and the other on a small sites toolkit. My name's Tara Butler. I work in the council's Future Merton team with my colleague Mark Warren, who'll be running the show for us. One quick thing I should say is that if anyone didn't have the pleasure of seeing my colleague Paul McGarry do a presentation on Morden regeneration last night, or hasn't looked at it on YouTube or anything, there was a presentation last night, just an update to the Sustainable Community Scrutiny Panel. I'm happy to take any minor questions on Morden regeneration at the very end of this presentation, if you like, Chair. And in the meantime, I'll pass over to Mark.
Cool, thanks Tara. Good evening everybody, I'm Mark Warren. I'm an urban designer from Future Merton. Just in case, I have a 2-year-old who may or may not be sleeping, so if you hear him, I'm sorry, but that's the joys of home working. So I'm here to present these two SPDs. They're in consultation at the moment. They're very interesting, I think. And so really urge everyone to engage with them, read them thoroughly, and go on the consultation websites and leave feedback. These two documents, in my eyes, are crucial to safeguard good quality design for future developments in Merton. They are all about encouraging character-led design, designs which are made in Merton. And so hopefully you guys will agree with some of the principles and moves we've done in them. Just to let you know, the character study was done by Allies and Morrison and urban practitioners, and the small sites guidance was done in-house by the Future Merton team, and they're both funded by the GLA housing capacity funding. Next slide, please, Chris. So first off, we're going to talk about the character study and why do we need a character study. So I think firstly, character is a lot more than built forms and spaces. It's social, it's historical, it's physical, and all of these different layers come together and they form the unique character of Merton, and crucially the unique character which is specific to every neighbourhood. What this does is this document analyzes this character, and it provides a series of guidances for future applicants to take on board when looking at their designs. Next slide, please, Chris. So as I said, the character is made up of multiple layers, and crucially, the most important character of all are people and residents of Merton, me included. And throughout this journey, we've been engaging heavily in light of COVID with the public. The first event we had was an online public survey, which managed to get over 400 responses, which really spoke about boundary lines and how do we perceive neighbourhoods. And we had some really interesting comments and conversations about that. And we also asked really specific questions about how people rate their neighbourhoods. And of course, how you rate your neighbourhood is completely, is a way to work out how we could improve them in the future. The second thing which we did was a community group survey to really understand what community groups are out there and their reach and how they're being used. And the third thing we did was a stakeholder workshop, which some of you may have been to, and it was about asking really focused questions about specific neighbourhoods. So we had one from each sub-area. So the last portion of this is the public consultation, which is live now. And like I said, we urge you to spread this amongst your networks to really get involved and have a say on what they think the character study is doing successfully and unsuccessfully. Next slide, please, Chris. So As part of the layers, we talk about people, but also our consultants, Allies and Morrison, did a really rigorous study into the other layers which make up Merton. So the historic evolution and the urban morphology, which represents what Merton is today. Natural environment. What's really interesting is that the mapping here is the natural environment it shows the biodiversity of Merton, and you can really see that the corridors of the train lines are really rich and the open spaces. How can we start to bring that out a bit? Communities, which that map there shows a load of community uses and community infrastructure, which is spread across Merton. Socioeconomics, this map there shows on the bottom right-hand corner, shows the median house prices, and you can really see that there's a clear difference between east and west. Environmental, which is really crucial, especially if we're aiming to be zero carbon by 2050. That mapping there actually shows the energy performance certificates from every household in Merton, and obviously we hope that that will increase in the future with all the ambitions the local plan sets out. And on the bottom left-hand corner, you've got built form. So Merton has grown over time, as you all know, from Victorian terraces to Metro 30s, Metroland homes, all the way to developments now. And this is purely a snapshot of what's in the report. This is a real summary, and there's a lot more depth involved in this, but I just wanted to highlight that there are multiple layers which this character study takes on board. Next slide. So all of these layers together makes up the distinctive neighborhoods of Merton, and the character study starts to delve into very specific neighborhoods and starts to give key opportunities as well as highlight key distinctive features of each neighborhood. Next slide. Perfect, thank you. So we're going to delve into Morden, as this is the Morden Community Forum. And like I said, in that first engagement, which was the kind of public survey, we asked a series of questions based around transport, environment, housing, economy, amenities, streets and spaces, traffic and parking, and safety. And out of all of the answers we got back, we plotted it on this plan just to understand what residents now are thinking are successful and unsuccessful things in Morden itself. And as you can see, the environment scores quite highly. I guess that's because of the connectivity with open spaces, which Morden has. But there's things like traffic and parking, which is quite low. And the plan with these is for us to continue looking at this to improve these, using this data to improve in future. So with every new development which we get by, and with every new intervention the council puts in, do we make these diagrams better? And hopefully we do. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Other way, please, Chris. Sorry, cheers. And so this is an example page of the character study, just to show how in depth it goes into each neighborhood. You can see that it highlights each ward within each neighborhood, and this is all and it provides key distinctive features as well as key opportunities. So the opportunities typically are about how we could improve the built environment, or improve connections to open spaces, or improve the quality of a main road and stuff like that. And that's all been informed by Allies and Morrison's rigorous analysis, as well as the comments we've been getting back through public consultations. Next slide. And at the end of each neighborhood, there's a strategic growth theme diagram. And this diagram really highlights the ambitions which could happen in the future, the potential ambitions. So for example, with Morden, it's all about how you can improve visual access into open spaces, and how the A23 corridor can be improved for active travel and active transport. So again, these diagrams, we really encourage residents to get involved and say what they think about them, whether or not they agree with these potential opportunities within the borough, and specifically within their neighborhood. Next slide, please. And it's also, as part of the character study, not only does it rigorously analyze the borough as it stands existing, It also looks at key opportunities for growth. As you know, we all need to provide more homes in Merton, and are there ways of what are the best ways and opportunities to provide character-led growth? And so this is really a snapshot again. It's a summary. Of course, it goes into a lot more detail, but it ranges from small scale, so how you can create more homes within an urban terrace, they're called. So as you can see on the left-hand side, you've got small scale interventions such as a side extension which provides an additional home, or backland development, which used to be an old garage site which provides more homes, all the way through to providing guidance towards taller buildings. And what's the definition of taller buildings within this document is 6 stories and above. I must stress that this document doesn't highlight specific areas where taller buildings can go. It provides a framework and a design approach to design tall buildings, which talk about suitability and sensibility, and a series of other things like reflecting local character and learning from the existing character of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. And so that leads directly onto the small sites toolkit. And I'll run through both documents now, and then we can answer any questions at the end. So next slide, please. So the small sites toolkit is a supplementary planning document to provide design guidance to small sites. And I just want to stress that small sites aren't a new thing. Historically, they have provided and contributed to Merton's housing delivery greatly. 97% of approved applications in Merton are typically on small sites. 61% of Merton residents think homes should be on underused small sites, and that was done with a previous engagement exercise we did for a housing delivery report earlier in 2020. And 62% of all new homes in the last 15 years were built on small sites. And so this really frames up what the significance of small site development is in Merton. Next slide, please. And all of these small sites come in complete varying qualities. And I mean, there are some which are post-war hang-ups. However, that being said, you know, there are some good quality ones and bad quality ones. And the whole point of this guidance is to improve the overall quality altogether. And of course, they all come in different shapes and sizes, providing anywhere between 1 home to 10 homes to more. And let me just say the definition of small sites before I go on is a site which is smaller than 0.25 hectares. And so this is really a snapshot of the different small sites you find in the borough. And you can see there's detached homes, which are between 2 terraces. You can see on the bottom right-hand corner, the Y Cube, which is in Mitcham, which is an experiment to do with modularized housing. You can see on the top right, the Cricketers pub, which you know, really took heritage on board to develop, and I understand went through a lot of conversations with community groups. But really, if you look closely at these photos, there is a complete varying quality, and that's what we want to try and improve. Next slide, please. And so the small sites guidance is focused around 4 different types of site. One of them is existing buildings. So if a house was to be converted into flats, how would we manage, how can we give guidance to provide better homes within those flats which are being made? The second one is rooftop development, which is fast becoming a kind of go-to construction, a go-to development solution, which is providing additional stories on top of buildings. The third one is street-facing infill buildings. So things which are street-facing have a completely different approach to things which are in the backland, which is the fourth category, which is typically back gardens, forgotten garages, or industrial land, which is locked between the rear gardens of other properties. Next slide, please. And so the toolkit consists of 3 different tools. The first one being design guidance, and this provides a series of diagrams and precedents to try and promote good quality design. It discusses things like overlooking distances, daylight sunlight. It provides a few parameters in terms of how you can approach massing in the best possible way. The second tool is case studies, and these are a series of exemplar projects in and outside of the borough of small sites to give some inspiration to future applicants, because quite often people want to do what their neighbours done, but actually if they can be pointed in a direction where is where it shows good quality design, maybe they're more likely to do that. And the third thing is a design and access statement template. And as part of any planning application, which is going to be an additional home, you must provide this thing called a design and access statement. And so this template asks the right questions. So it asks things like, have you considered the character of the neighborhood? Have you considered just the sustainability of your projects and things like that? Next slide, please. And so the whole guidance itself is hinged off these four main principles. The first one being made in Morden, which ties directly back to the character study, making sure that projects really consider the neighborhood, the street, and how they really create and enhance the quality and character of the neighborhood. So they're not, you know, alien buildings just plopping down into Morden. The second thing is fit for purpose. So how these buildings and homes can provide high quality spaces and are fit for modern day living. The third principle is putting people first. So this looks at emotional and physical well-being and how that can be promoted in the architecture and design of these buildings. And the fourth one is the economical and sustainable. So that's looking at how buildings should be trying to achieve, you know, passive house standards and how really stepping towards the 2050 target of a zero carbon future. Next slide, please. So just as an example, this is a page from the guidance, and we provide typical guidance such as this, which is really highlighting that the top diagram you can see is talking about conjoining buildings and how that could effectively have a negative effect on street presence. And so and looking at things like, I don't know, plants on roofs. But this is very much looking at the built form and how you can make that better and giving really clear parameters and guidance to that. And next slide, please. And we also provide non-typical guidance, the softer stuff. So if you think the first slide, the slide before was the hardware, this stuff is kind of the software. So this is looking at things like, if you enter a lobby, can you see the stairs? And is that a promoted way to move up the building rather than taking the lift? When you enter the lobby, is there large enough space to talk to your neighbor whilst you're getting your post? When you enter the lobby, can you see outside space and is it naturally lit? So it's asking all of those questions as well. So it's coming at two angles when it comes to good quality design. Next slide, please. The case studies, as I said, is just a series of good quality exemplar projects which you could learn from. And again, it explains why they're good. Next slide. And the DAS statement, like I said, is providing a series of questions and checklists for applicants to take care of whilst they're doing their projects to make sure they're answering the right questions, to make sure that they're making good quality decisions to get a good outcome. Next slide. So that's the summary of both reports. It's a proper summary. They are a lot longer and a lot more rigorous than what I've just explained. Hopefully it has sparked some interest, and I really encourage everyone to go online and put down feedback and comments on these two documents. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. And your son didn't wake up in the middle of it, and I look forward to singing to him again at some stage in the near future. Fingers crossed. Eh?
So.
Right. All right. So, any questions for Mark not on Morden regeneration paper? I know that you have a question on that shortly, but any questions specific to Mark on the presentation he's just given? Wow. Oh, sorry, Leslie. Leslie, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I have done, Nick. Mark, first of all, I've never even heard of these consultations. So how are they promulgated? How do you inform people that these are available to be looked at and filled in? Because I haven't got a clue. And I'm well into, I'm sure that Stephen Allen Bridges will tell you that I'm on other WhatsApp groups where they complain about various other things, who are far more knowledgeable than I am. And there's ongoing things with the phase 1 building in Ravensby Estate about the lighting, which seems to be completely ignored by Clarion. So how do you know, how it all sounds really, really lovely, but it all sounds just like sound bites to me. So how do you deal with people who have a genuine complaint? And I take phase 1 in Ravensbury, the lighting which is imposing itself onto the people in Hengelo Gardens. and everyone's saying, oh, yeah, it's fine. So how do people redress any of their complaints when they're being completely sort of just ignored, basically? Thank you.
Tara, should I go for it, or do you want to?
Yeah, Mark, I'll take this one. Thanks.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, Leslie. This document won't address specific complaints that are live and active now. And if there is a particular issue about a particular planning permission or planning situation, you can contact the council's planning team, which I can ask Chris to send around the contact details after this meeting. But in general, the way we promote these consultations is they started, what day are we today? Wednesday. They started last week. So this is one of the ways we're promoting it, by coming to these meetings. And we have sent out some social media messages, and we have sent out about 3,000 emails. And what I'd really encourage is for everybody on the group to pass this on now that you've heard about this tonight, because actually, to be brutally honest, the most effective way of consultation, as you said, is being in groups where you're hearing from your neighbours and your friends. The council's official email will largely often fall on deaf ears, but actually someone saying, hey, have you seen this, is much, much more effective. So I'd appeal to everybody here, if you've seen this, if you have a social media presence, if you know about this, please pass it on. As Mark said, it's available on Mordens consultation website. And just by using a search engine and typing in Morden Borough Character Study or Morden Small Sites.
I would add to that we often think, councillors included, think that things don't happen, that we just do these consultations and they just disappear into thin air somewhere. But actually, I've been living in the borough for 30 odd years and 35 years, blimey. And there's been immense change during that time. Not all of it good, but an awful lot of it very good. And most of that has been driven by, it hasn't happened higgledy-piggledy. It's happened according to plans. And the people that make the plans, the people that help them make the plans, is us. So consultations do count; they are important, and and I would encourage you not just to fill the thing in yourselves, but as Tara's just said, tell your friends. Thank you very much. Now, any other questions for Mark specifically before we get on to the Morden regeneration? No, there aren't. Mark, you're off the hook. Oh, sorry, Dennis.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm sure that I have advantage because I've been involved in some of this for a long time. And I think I've asked Tara this once before. We are under pressure, or the council's under pressure to provide loads more homes. How do we, as a council, as a community, protect all our green spaces, all our character, while still providing the amount of new homes that we clearly need in London, because London is getting more populated by the minute, although with COVID there might be a lot moving out as well. But how do we propose to actually do that protection, provide the homes in a characterful way, but still keep all the green spaces and all the things that we like about Morden, for instance? Well, I mean Morden particularly has got loads of, like Morden Park and all the other spaces and all the characterful buildings that we already have. Does that make sense, that question?
It does, Dennis, and thank you. Really, part of the way we do that, Dennis, is by using these type of documents. So most planning policies in most boroughs, including Morden, when someone submits a planning application, it will say something like, you should build your building that reflects or enhances the character of the area. And often, without a document like the one that Mark has presented tonight, there then follows a big debate about what the character of the area really is. So I might think something, Nick might think something else. Dennis, you yourself might think a third thing. So actually, the document that Mark has presented on the borough character study is trying to corral some of those thoughts. And there's specific chapters in there about Morden. And it's drawn from the physical environment, as you say, the green spaces, the community buildings, the schools, the excellent transport, but it's also drawn from people's views. As Mark said, we've spoken to, I think, 400 people and community groups during the end of 2020, well, middle to the end of 2020, to try and get this borough character study to where it is today. And what people have said has informed that chapter on Morden and informed the other sections of it. So exactly for those reasons, Dennis, I'd encourage people to respond. And even if they just focus on the section on Morden and give us feedback on that, it would really be appreciated. Because once this document is finished, this document will be guidance for anyone making decisions on planning. So the council's planning applications committee and council officers making decisions on planning applications. And this will help us to provide the new homes and reflect character.
Oh, Peter, unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you, Nick. Yes, Mark, when you were talking about the 4 types of possible development within the toolkit there, the 4th one was backland, I think.
Yeah, it was, yeah, correct, yeah.
And within that, you let slip the word back gardens.
Yeah.
A lot of people watching this will be quite nervous about that, I can tell you.
Yeah.
And if I ask you to cross-reference that to the white paper on, got it here. Planning for the future, yes.
Yeah.
Which divides all land into either growth, renewal, or protected. So quite a lot of the houses I'm thinking about are come in that renewal area, that just north of the town centre in Morden. Within the white paper, though, it does say that local authorities can take steps if they so wish to protect back gardens or residential gardens, which I think is the sort of thing we would want taken into account. So I'm really just looking for some caveats around that proposal for developing on back gardens, or conditions under which it would or would not be allowed.
Yeah, I mean the document itself provides purely design guidance. So if you were to develop the back garden, which in Merton there are many examples of that happening historically and currently in planning at the moment, some of them are not good and some of them are better, but this provides design guidance to make them as best as possible, to make sure that space standards are correct, to make sure that the quality is good. Of course, every application will go through planning. It has to go through a planning application and it will be judged on a case-by-case basis. That being said, that what the character study highlights is that there's multiple homes with very large back gardens, which could be a potential place to unlock more homes. So, there is a balance. The guidance itself doesn't promote it, nor does it demote it. It just says if you are considering to put in an application of this sort, this is the best way to approach it. I hope that answers your question, because it's not specifically promoting it as such. So backland itself covers a multitude of developments. It's purely something which is hidden behind a building. So it does encompass back garden development, but it also encompasses ex-industrial timber yards or garage sites, which are landlocked within a terrace house, within terrace homes. So hope that answers a bit of your question. Tara, you may have something better to add.
Peter, do you have any further questions on that?
I mean, the reassurance there, Mark, Tara, both that it would still be subject to planning permission, that there would not be an automatic permitted development in those circumstances is important.
Yeah. So if you're going to provide an additional home, it must go through a planning application process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Cool.
I see that Dickie would like to ask a question now of you, Mark.
Thank you, Nick. To Tara or Mark, as you pointed out, this is a design guidance document, which is a great idea, but how do you intend to instill this into the beginning process rather than the end? You've already mentioned that when applications come in, you're going to say, oh, well, does this kind of fulfill the character study? But that seems to be after the fact, and you need to be working with developers and architects to make it just part of the beginning process, part of the thinking. And I'm afraid I'm not convinced it's going to work, because you already have a document that, for example, another outside consultant produced about commercial buildings and about how you don't want windows full of just stickers and closing off, and you don't just want brown box buildings. And yet that document sits somewhere on the website and doesn't appear to affect any of our commercial buildings or goes out to anyone. So how will you make this an integral part as opposed to a reactive thing? It will be a literally a future Merton thing.
Yeah, I think there's different ways to approach that. I think typically larger, small sites, and actually, I don't know, more difficult and constrained small sites typically go through a pre-application route. So an applicant would apply to the planning authority, which is Merton Council, and they'd say, we'd want to do a pre-application meeting with you. And in that situation, we're on board quite early with the design process, and we can push the documents to say, this you should look at this for it to be you know, of character and of good design. I think the document you're talking about, a lot of it falls within PD, so it doesn't necessarily have that route through an officer usually. Some do, some don't, but this hopefully through pre-application meetings will do that. There will be a load of applicants, of course, which do, you know, a side extension of their home, which this may fall between the cracks. And of course, if that goes through planning, they will then flag it up and, you know, say, have you looked at this document? We will refuse this, I guess, because this will basically be used to assess applications.
Right. There is on the box here from Pippa a small question. Pippa, I think you should ask one of the town centre yourself. But Pippa's asked, Tara, you mentioned 3,000 emails. Who are the recipients?
Anyone who has signed up to be notified about our local plan should be the recipients. So on the council's website, there is a place for people who want to find out more about plan making, planning guidance, or the local plan, can put their email, and then they will receive an alert. So it could be an organisation or it could be a person. And as Chris also says in the chat, another way of doing this about finding out about all council consultations is that there is a way of also registering on the council's website for all consultations. And then you will receive an automatic alert when your consultation is uploaded.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, oh, Stephen, this is on Mark's presentation, yeah? Unmute yourself.
Thank you. I wonder if Tara would answer this for me, and it's more for everyone as well. So Merton is described as an infill borough. If you can talk us through that and compare us with a borough where they can build 10,000 houses on one space. It's really crucial that people understand this difference and why we're doing these small sites, this character study. This is an infill borough, and compare us, Tara, with a borough that is not an infill borough, but that can build 10,000 houses on one space.
Thanks, Stephen. Yes, Merton is really located at the sort of boundary between inner London and outer London. And Merton is characterised by small development sites. I know sometimes it may not seem like this, and we can all point to bigger developments that we know about or that we've heard about, but really, Merton's development sites are small. And when I say small, I mean less than 10 homes per site. So for the past 15 years, over 90% of the planning applications that the council receives are for less than 10 homes. That 90% is an incredibly high number. Most boroughs have about half their applications are on smaller sites of less than 10 homes, and the other half are on sites of 100 homes here, 150 homes there. If we compare ourselves to, say, Croydon or Wandsworth that have a swathes of development, it just makes you think about the contrast. And the reason that we have so many small sites is simply that we have very fragmented land ownership. Most of the land is in private ownership, either individuals like ourselves or small organisations, and lots of people own little sites. And land is expensive in Morden, so buying up sites is very expensive. And that means we get, as I said, 90% of applications for homes are on small sites. So as Mark said, it's really important to drive up the quality of those small applications. And it's really important, as is in the small sites toolkit, that we give a little template for developers who want to build something. So if someone wants to build 2 homes over there and they maybe haven't gone through the planning process before, the small sites toolkit just gives them that nudge to try and help raise the quality. Because we do get some fairly, some of the documents, for example, that the council receives are sometimes not great quality. So if we can drive up the quality of small developments, it will make such a difference to delivering quality and improving the character or maintaining good character in the borough.
Very much. I hope that answers the question, Stephen. Now, I think that lets Mark off the hook at last.
Thank you.
What we have now is got a question from Pippa about the town centre regeneration, which I'd like her to actually ask in person. What I'm going to say, though, is that the town centre regeneration isn't really on the agenda. It's inevitable. We do talk about it. So I'm going to try and get this part of the meeting over by 22:09, because I promised Chris we'd be finished before midnight. Okay, Pippa, unmute yourself and ask the question.
Okay, well, I'll just read what I've put. So I did watch the relevant bit of scrutiny, and there was this £300,000 of SIL money mentioned as an interim backup if a developer is not found anytime soon. But I find the council process is somewhat labyrinthine. I'm really unclear as to what this actually means. How might that fund get used? Who would decide who uses it? If yes, if you could enlighten me, Tara, that would be great.
Thanks. That's a good question. By way of background for everyone, when Pippa said SIL, she meant Community Infrastructure Levy. So the council takes money, most councils take money from developers and are able to spend it on infrastructure in their borough. And last November, at Cabinet decided to allocate £300,000 of the neighbourhood fund towards Morden. And this is because it was clear by November that due to various reasons, including funding and COVID and lots of other things that Paul explained a bit of last night, that Morden regeneration wasn't going to happen as soon as we thought. Certainly wasn't going to happen in the next sort of 2 or 3 months. And people, including people here tonight, have been raising quite legitimately that Morden is looking a bit tired and needs a bit of TLC. So Cabinet decided to take £300,000 of neighbourhood funds, and it will be used to kind of revitalise Morden a bit. Now, there is a Morden steering group of councillors. So for the 4 wards around Morden, including some of the councillors here tonight, there is a steering group of councillors who will help guide how that's spent. But it could be spent on things like improving the public realm. It could be spent on tidying the highway. It could be spent on shopfront improvements. Probably not for anything that's directly part of the regeneration zone, because it's probably not advisable to spend money on a shopfront that then disappears in the next 4 years. But certainly there are other shopfronts in Morden that could do some TLC with some TLC. And the Morden steering group of councillors will be meeting, I think, every second month over the next few months, and we'll come up with ideas on how to spend that funding.
All right.
Can I just
Yes,
react?
no.
Okay. Thank you, Tara. That's really helpful. I did suspect what you had just revealed, that it would be unlikely to be spent in anywhere that is the regeneration zone, because potentially, yeah, it just, you're then going to just redo it. But how does one influence this steering group?
At this point, I'll say that's what our councillors are here for tonight. But if you'd like to find out more about that funding, if you type in Merton Cabinet November 2020 into a search engine, there's a report on the agenda that sets out some of the ideas. And it's not to say it wouldn't be spent within the regeneration zone. It just probably wouldn't be spent on something that, like a shopfront, which cost a lot of money to do. So it might be spent on, say, some cleaning, but maybe not structural issues, for example.
Yeah, thanks. Because £300,000, don't want to knock it, but it's not a great deal, but it's something. Thank you.
But Pippa, if you want to send things through to us, you've got a captive audience, a receptive audience here.
Okay.
Just send us your ideas. If you have ideas, I'm sure we'll be listening.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Any other questions? It's a pleasure. Any other questions about Morden Town Centre regeneration of? Wow, Tara, you got away with it too. Okay, so on the basis of that, I'm going to move on to our last speaker, Barry Causa, who's going to tell us all about the coronavirus and what we're doing with it. Welcome, Barry.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies I joined the meeting late this evening. I was meeting our regular COVID-19 community champions this evening. So we've got some slides which are just popping up, so thank you, Chris. My name is Barry Causa and I work in the Merton Council Public Health team. So thank you for inviting me back to the session. I spoke to you what seems like a long time ago now. Chris, next slide, please. What I'm going to try to do tonight for you, I'm going to give you an overview on the COVID impact on our communities within the borough. I'm going to share some information, some of the data that we've got so far. Give you an overview on some of the updates and developments and kind of that direction of travel. Set out the spring roadmap. I know that many of you would have read this when it got published earlier this week, but also talk about some opportunities for action, how you can get involved, how you can help that COVID response, because I know many of you are already doing so. So thank you for that. Next slide, please, Chris. Firstly, apologies. I don't know how I've managed to do that, but the title of this slide is written backwards. I didn't know Word was even able to do that, but for next time, I will resolve that, so apologies. That's supposed to say summary of the key messages. But what I can tell you is that the new cases, the new infections in Merton have dropped significantly due to the lockdown. The lockdown has done its job. So the 7-day case rate in Merton is now down to about 132 cases per 100,000 residents. And what that really means is about 40 new infections every day within Merton. So that's dropped since just around that Christmas and New Year period from about just under 400 every single day. So these are significant drops. What I can say is that they are still high. We are still concerned about those numbers. They are dropped. They have dropped significantly, but we need to continue to get those to drop even further. And that's going to be really important. As we know, the strategy for COVID zero is unlikely to take place. So it's about living with COVID, and to be able to live with COVID, we need to drive those new infections down as much as we possibly can. As well as cases dropping within the borough, we have seen that the number of deaths have reduced as well. And I've got a few slides later on which I'll share with you. Testing rates have also dropped, but that is to be expected due to the nature of the enhanced testing in Pollard's Hill, which you will all know about. So next slide, please. So this shot simply shows that the drop. So we are the black line there, and you can see that just before Christmas the rates were just under 1,000 per 100,000, and you can see they have dropped significantly in the borough. We are looking at these every single day within the public health team to see where they are falling, and I'll go on to show you a little bit more detail on the cases in the borough. But that's a good sign for us within Merton. Next slide, please. So this slide, if you focus on the left-hand side, this shows us the fall in rates, but it shows us those fall by age groups. So on the bottom of that, you can see the green line. That's the 0 to 15-year-olds new infections, and you can see that has dropped. All ages have dropped, and that's really welcome, particularly that drop in the older age groups, because as you know, those are the groups that are most vulnerable to severe COVID. On the right-hand side, this shows us the number of new cases, number of new infections within the borough over the last 6 weeks or so by ethnicity. And so again, I'd say ignore the bottom line, which is the other category, which is very dark purple, because it's complicated and it's not that helpful right now. But what we can see really clear, and this is very similar to wave 1, and this is very similar to the London position and the national position, that there does appear to be a disproportionate impact from COVID on our Asian and Black communities within the wave 2 compared to the white community. So next slide, please. So the left slide is showing us the number of infections from east compared to west, and you can see though that orange bar on the left hand side is the number of infections in the east. So there are higher infections within the east of the borough. And so the diagram, the map on the right hand side really just shows that pictorially, so you can see the difference between east and west. Lots of reasons why that might happen, and I'd be interested we need to explore this a little bit more. You know, the east is far more diverse than the west. Perhaps those residents are less able to work at home. Perhaps they're in roles that they are frontline workers within health and care. So it's a complex picture, but we are seeing both the rates in the east higher than the west. Next slide, please. This is a very sad slide, everybody. I've shown this to you, I think, before. This shows that 423 of our Merton residents have died due to COVID-related causes. And again, on the right-hand side, what you can see there, so the blue bars are the COVID-19 related deaths, and there has been a bit of a spike recently as we have gone through that significant second wave. And you can see that they are dropping. And what we can see is the number of new inpatients are dropping for all age groups, and the number of deaths are reducing as well. But that is a particularly sad and concerning slide. But also you can see the orange bars there, and this is the non-COVID-19 related deaths. And again, these have spiked. So we need to understand a little bit more so that we can look at the death files to understand what's happening there. But again, those non-COVID-19 deaths, perhaps people are reluctant to go to the NHS, perhaps they're trying to protect the NHS, perhaps long-term conditions, perhaps healthy lifestyles have changed during this difficult year. So there's a number of different complex reasons for that. But we can see that hopefully we are past the peak of that at this stage. Next slide, please. Again, it looks like quite a complex 4 slides on this one, but essentially what this is showing is the NHS indicators that are all going in the right way. I've kind of touched on this, that inpatients are dropping, inpatients are dropping in all age groups, and that's really important for us. On the bottom right-hand side, you can see the red bar along the bottom, and that is the number of people in our hospitals across southwest London that are in intensive care. And these are the most sick, most vulnerable people. And so they are still significant numbers in hospital that are very unwell. Next slide, please, Chris. So that's the data. I've given you an overview on the cases and the infections and what we can see so far. And looking forward, the spring roadmap. I'm not going to go through in lots of detail of this, but what I can do, because the text is very small, we can share this with you in larger format so you can have a look through, because it's a really helpful guide. But essentially, there's a 4-step program that has been launched, published by the government. So step 1 starts, as you all know, on the 8th of March. And the first big step there is that schools are going to open open for all young people. And I know that our schools are working incredibly hard. The head teachers, the school staff are working on risk assessments and testing regimes so that they can open up. We know that this is the best place for children to be. So they are working really, really hard on that. And there is 5 weeks, at least 5 weeks between each of the steps. So what that means is that we can make those changes in step 1. And within those 5 weeks, we can evaluate the impact of those changes. Have the cases increased? And so that we can make, or the national government can make a decision then about when to implement step 2 and step 3 and step 4. So we have a roadmap, but I think it's really important to say that, as I said at the start, we need to drive down the infections so that we are more able to cope with those smaller numbers. And again, thinking about how we open up communities, how we open up business and retail, which is really important for us. Working with our marshals so that they can work with our town centres, the Merton Chamber of Commerce and those other organisations. Next slide, please. So just a number of just key updates for you this evening. You will have all heard about the enhanced testing program in Pollard's Hill. Many of you supported the enhanced testing program. So the enhanced testing program was set up in response to a single case of the South African variant in the CR4 postcode. And so we set up an enhanced testing program. We were told by the government to set one up to track any community spread and to restrict any further transmission. So this was a 2-week testing program and it closed on the 17th of February. And we had a fantastic response from our residents, from our workplaces, from our schools, voluntary sector, individuals, councillors. People came together to help us deliver this program. And we achieved what we needed to do, which was to give out 10,000 of our test kits. A huge percentage of those were returned on top of the number of people that went to a mobile testing unit. So far, there's no additional variants of concern, no additional cases of the South African variant reported through that testing program. Clearly, there's going to be a few more days before we find out more information. But we are now collating the findings and the lessons learned, because as we know, these variants do pop up and we may need to do this again in the future. So those lessons learned are going to be really important for us. And we will clearly share those messages and the findings with the community, including community forums. You may have heard as well that the high risk groups, so these were the shielding list, so the clinically extremely vulnerable. So we are supporting 6,500 of our residents within Merton to shield or to stay at home. And we've also, due to a new risk assessment tool, there's an extra 7,000 residents added to that list. And we would encourage all of those residents to stay at home until the 31st of March and follow the advice in the letters. So each of those individuals have got a letter from the national government and from us within the council explaining what they need to do to keep themselves and their communities safe. As we have one eye on the future, but really important for right now is test and trace. This is one of those services that protects us all. And it's really important that test and trace and isolate is part of our process for controlling virus spread. So anybody with any symptoms, even mild, if you're not sure, if you're thinking, is this a continuous cough? Have I lost my sense of taste or smell? Not too sure. We would say be cautious, stay at home, self-isolate and request a test from the NHS or call 119. The other part of testing that we have in place is called regular asymptomatic. So these are the lateral flow devices that we've all been hearing about and many of us have been taking part in. So within Merton, we would strongly encourage frontline workers, carers and volunteers to take part in that testing program twice a week. And we are intentionally using the phrase frontline staff. It's not key workers. I count as a key worker, but as you can see, I'm sitting in my kitchen. I'm not a frontline worker, so I don't need to participate in regular testing. But these are really important devices that help us control the spread of the virus within the borough. And again, you can request a test. These are free and they are asymptomatic, and you can get these from the Merton Council website. And you can then get a test from either Morden assembly halls or the network of community pharmacies. And we're expecting an announcement very, very, very soon around home testing. And again, testing by itself does nothing. We know this. So the important part of this is about isolation. So if you were to get a positive result, it's really important to stay at home to break that chain of transmission, but also to respond to NHS test and trace. So they will make contact with you to explore close contacts, so that again, we can drive down those infections levels, which are still high within the borough. I'm not going to focus too much on
I'm not sure what he was going to focus on there, folks. I think he's frozen a tiny bit, which is a shame because it's an amazing thing. This. Can we get Barry back? Oh, he's back. He's back.
Oh, sorry. Did you lose me for a moment?
Completely, Barry. You for about a minute there.
Oh, sorry. Which was the last bit you heard?
Well, you were halfway through key updates and developments.
Oh, okay. So did you hear test and trace?
Yep.
Oh, fantastic. So I will move on to vaccinations. Apologies, everybody. So vaccination rollout is continuing by the NHS, and that's in line with the JCVI priority list. So the NHS is now on priority group 5 and 6. So that's residents that are 65 to 69 and those clinically vulnerable residents. And there's more information that can be accessed by the NHS website, which is on the link there. Within the borough, we are supporting the NHS on their vaccine equity plan. So that's a really important part so that we can support those residents that perhaps have barriers to accessing vaccinations or have hesitancy for a number of different reasons. And there are a number of webinars that are taking place led by clinicians to answer any questions. And again, we can share the information of the dates of those because many people have questions about vaccinations, which is fantastic. It's really important that we're able to ask those questions to the clinicians so that they can answer them for you. Last point on vaccination rollout is that there was a very positive study released very recently called the Siren study. And this was a significantly large study looking at 40,000 health and care workers who have been tested twice a week over the last number of months. And what that's showing is that after vaccination, there's a 72% drop of new infections after a first dose, and that increases to, I think it was 86%. So again, as well as that individual benefit of a vaccine, which prevents severe COVID for that individual, we're seeing potential signals that it would prevent transmission as well. So again, the vaccination does protect other people as well as the individual. Next slide, please. Final slide from me is opportunities for action. I know many of you are already involved, volunteering or supporting or just sharing key messages. We've now got over 150 of our community champions. That's who I was with this evening. They meet every single Wednesday at 12 till 1 and 7 till 8 p.m. We talk about particular issues. Today, we were talking about contact tracing and the marshals, about how they can open up the high streets for us and help us keep us safe. So welcome any more champions. The image on the right-hand side, we also have a network of young adult community champions. So this is a group of young people between 18 and 30 that meet on a regular basis to help share their messages with their communities and their young people too. It's a really positive way for our residents, workers, volunteers, carers, counsellors to get involved, and many of you already do. Another way to find out more information and to take part is by signing up to the COVID-19 newsletter. Again, that's via the council website. There's the next one's going out tomorrow, I believe. So again, you can register, which has tens of thousands of people receive that email. For any more information, you can contact us at Public Health at Merton, or clearly you can contact me and I can navigate you through. Thinking about the organisations, we work with individuals, we work with carers, but we are also working with organisations. And so we have a network. We're working with the Chamber of Commerce within Merton and MVSC. So we've put some funding into a Merton Giving Grants programme. So far, about £80,000 and 20 organisations have taken part in that programme and got some funds, which is very much about COVID response. And so the next deadline is coming up, and it's a light touch approach to applications. The next deadline is coming up on the 10th of March. Next slide, please. Yes, this is the last slide, sorry. And it wouldn't be a public health one without me talking about hands, face and space. It's going to be really important as we open up. We are still in lockdown. Whilst people are getting vaccines, while there's some positive shoots and we can see some opportunities and light, we do need to continue to follow those non-pharmaceutical interventions, which is washing our hands, covering our face and making space. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer as many questions as I can.
Barry, that was excellent. Who's got questions? Elspeth, you've got a question. I'll mute you.
Yeah, just a quickie. We know that the BAME community have not been coming forward as much as the white community to have the vaccination. What efforts are being done in Merton to try to address that problem? Particularly, like, has someone gone along to the mosque and spoken to senior people there, the big one in London Road? What is actually being done?
It's a really good question, Elspeth, and it's a really important question because we know that those communities are perhaps most in need of taking that vaccination because it will protect them. So we're working with the NHS. We are engaging. So we have commissioned an organisation called BAME Voice, who are working with voluntary sector organisations in those faith settings to really understand what's going on, what that hesitancy or what the barriers are to accessing vaccination. So we've got that network and we're going to continue doing that. The NHS have also set up a number of their webinars led by clinicians from BME communities. So over the last 2 Sundays, I've been taking part in those webinars. We've had 100 residents taking part from all BAME communities across the borough, directly asking questions to our GPs, to our clinicians, to our pharmacists, to overcome or just ask their questions. And they've been really positively received. There's more to do. We are going to continue doing those. And again, colleagues, if you have an opportunity or a newsletter, or you'd like us to come and talk to groups or organisations, we're more than happy to do so. Clearly, I work in public health, but we have clinicians that can come as well to answer specific questions.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Barry? Barry, looks like you've stumped them all there. I'd like to say something actually before you go. It's regards Pollard's Hill and what was done out there. I was very privileged to take part in the exercise, and I can tell you I was working alongside officers from planning, officers from legal, officers from environmental health, and we were backed up, believe it or not, by the whole of the bailiff team, who were. It was across the whole council. There were officers coming along to make that work, and we did it in snow and in minus temperatures, and it was very, very difficult indeed. And they achieved extraordinary things. I don't think I've ever been prouder to have lived in Morden and to have a group of officers like that taking so much care of us, the residents. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. Thank you through you, Barry, to all of them. Well, that's probably about the size of it. Is that right, Chris? Have we got anything more to do? He's gone.
That's it. I'm still here. No, that's it for today.
Well, colleagues, we got finished before 9 o'clock. Thank you all very much for coming, and that's the way we get to say goodbye to each other. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.